Now that we got the rod all wrapped up, we're going to go ahead and use this tip glue just by heating it up with a lighter. Smear it on the tip. Take our tip. Press our tip on. And just line it up with the rest of the guides. Let it cool and harden, and then be good to go. We're just using Classic Coat here. Again, equal parts, part A and part B. And just mix it for as long as it takes to where when you start mixing it, it gets cloudy. And just keep mixing, and the cloudiness will go away. The other thing is to be real careful when you're mixing, not to get sloppy and splash it or whatever you use to mix it with. Keep it against the bottom of the mixing cup, so you're not lifting up and down, bringing in bubbles. The less bubbles you have when you mix it, the less you'll have to use the alcohol burner to get out. Now I'll wait a couple of minutes after I mix it the first time. Let the bubbles come up to the top, and let the epoxies start to mix together on their own. Now once I've waited, I'll come back and mix it again to make sure all the swirls are gone, it's 100% mixed perfectly, and that it's now a one part. Looks like the epoxy is ready to go here. Just finishing up. No more swirls. Bubbles have all gone out. Alright. Now when you start to epoxy, just go ahead and stick the brush in the epoxy. Get it damp. I'm going to go ahead and soak it with epoxy. But don't get too much. Dab off the excess. And I like to start at the top of the guide towards the actual ring and work my way back to on the foot. Just nice and easy, just adding a little bit at a time. And as you see excess, spots are a little heavier than others, go ahead and spread it around. Just move with your brush. You don't need a cake on the epoxy, but you don't want it paper thin. After a couple rotations, you should be able to look back at it and see that it's filled in all its gaps and it's all even. Now we've got this guide partially epoxied. Just kind of touch it up here and there where you see thin spots. And just come back, a couple, an eighth of an inch or 1/16 of an inch off of your wraps onto the blank, so it's another nice smooth transition. And sometimes it's a lot easier just put a thin layer on and then move along to the rest of your guides. Come back, which I'll show you in a minute, and use the alcohol burner, get your bubbles off, and then add more to the thin spots. And if you need to, you can even let it cure and then come back and add a second layer. After you've let your first coat dry, if you decide it's a little too thin, no problem. Come back and put another second coat on, and they go on twice as easy as the first coat. Now that I've epoxied all the guides, I'll come back. Now the bubbles have had time to come to the surface, any bubbles that are there, and I can go ahead and hit them with the alcohol burner, and just to get them to release and be gone. And when you use the alcohol burner, the flame, you do not want the flame to touch the epoxy or the guide. Just a couple inches away, nice even heat. You shouldn't need much, and just a quick douse if you need it. If you see bubbles, put it under there when they come by. They should release. If they don't sweat it. They'll come back around, and just after a little bit of heating over time, they'll release. But most should be gone right away. Don't overheat it. If you overheat the guide too much, you'll create even more bubbles that will release from the the thread. If you have high spots or low spots after you've come back and use your alcohol burner, let the rod set up for an hour or so, and then come back and either add epoxy or just even it out with the brush a little bit. And the epoxy will be pliable for a couple hours before it really sets up and you can't do anything with it. Okay. The finish altogether should be real smooth, flat, shiny, no swirl marks in it. Swirl marks will come from heating it too much or not mixing your epoxy properly to begin with. It's just a real nice, sleek look to it, and you'll be happy with the finish.